Hey everyone, welcome to Worship Artistry. I'm Jason Houtsma.
I'm Nick Rice.
We never say our last names.
We don't. It was weird.
That was weird. I said it.
I felt like I'd participate. Yeah.
One of the things we talked about in our thinking about the future of worship.
Yep.
We talked about maybe naming some musicians that maybe fly under the radar that we'd like to share with you.
Yep.
Because it gives us inspiration in the way that we play, and we've all heard of Elevation, and we've all heard of Passion, and we've heard of those guys.
100%.
But there's a lot of other people doing cool stuff, and
That's
I think cool people like us can tell people what we're listening to.
Well, go ahead and kick it off, Jason. What have you been listening to?
Okay, so I'm not only going to tell you what I'm listening to, I'm going to tell you how I found it. So I think in that last video, I was talking about how we were leading the song This Is Love by Anchor Hymns, which I love. Has been going incredibly well. Here's something I think is super rad. It's a call and response song. And I found that as long as you just put the response in parentheses, everyone knows exactly what to sing. They picked it up immediately. I was like, this is going to be a call and response song. And I was like, this is love. And everyone's, this is love. You're like,
hallelujah.
Nailed it.
Hallelujah.
And there's some kind of interesting things that happen in the chorus, and it just totally worked. Everybody got it. So highly recommend it. Got many compliments on it. I'm like, I have to keep being, I didn't write it. It's Anchor Hymns.
This is love, Anchor Hymns.
Yeah, This Is Love, Anchor Hymns. Wonderful song. So I've been leading this song. And so I was listening to the song on the way to church just to kind of get it locked in my brain.
Learn it.
Yeah, just on the way to church. I was learning it. No, I'd been learning it up through the week, but I have I have like the memory of a goldfish sometimes. So it's like, come on, get it. Let's just get it down.
Yeah.
And so lovely Spotify just played that song, and then it went to another song by Josh Garrels.
Okay.
Called What a Friend.
I don't know if I know Josh Garrels.
I want to say he was in Portland. I'm familiar with him. He's done a lot of things over the years, but I've never really dug into him. He's involved in Porter's Gate. He does really beautiful kind of orchestrations and everything.
It's like Porter's Gate, kind of like Potter's Hand.
Sure.
Okay.
It's one of those collectives.
Okay.
They're doing a lot of stuff. But this song called What a Friend came on. And it was so beautiful. I almost just started tearing up in the car. And I cannot wait to lead it at my church.
That's awesome.
Because to me, a good song for my congregation is very simple. It's like, I want you to be able to sing this and right away know what we're singing and to actually put some meaning on it. And so he just sings this what a friend we have in Jesus. He sings that 4 times. And it's like, okay, he's kind of taking that song, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, and making it a little hipper. But then he follows that up where he just sings 4 times, greater love has no man than he laid down his life for his friend. And it's just it just grabbed me in such a way that it takes that idea that we're all so familiar with and then reminds us and he did the greatest thing. And it's so simple and it's orchestrated so beautifully. And I told my wife about it and she's just like, I can't stop listening to that album. So it's Josh Garrels. The song is called What a Friend. And I haven't even dove into the album yet because I have that song on.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. I haven't found any new worship type or Christian artists that I like other than you.
Oh, thank you.
Honestly, your mountain song. Is it I am a mountain?
You are a mountain.
You are a mountain.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been singing I am a mountain. But I keep singing that one, just humming it, and I really, really enjoy it. So I'm excited for when that comes out, honestly, for people to hear it.
It's coming. I've got a plan.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a plan now.
An artist I've been really enjoying, though, is an old friend of mine, actually. One of my... his name's Louis Knudsen, and he started a new band called Lewy Canoe.
How's it spelled?
Lewy Canoe.
Okay.
Lewy Canoe.
Because Knudsen, I would think KN.
Yeah, that's how he spells his name. Yeah, he's got a new album out. Came out in August or something, and I just think that dude he's probably the most talented person I've ever met. Truly, his voice is so unique and amazing to me. He can just go from the lowest low to the high and just super. And it's not your typical pop singing and the music is very. I don't really know. This new album is different than his old albums, but it's very indie feeling, very just raw. I think they even did a live recording to try to get that feeling of just a raw feeling. And I just love that about the album. But one of the songs called Vultures, that's what I really, really, really like. Yeah, it's a really good album.
I'll check it out. Lewy Canoe.
Oh, Lewy Canoe. Yeah, Louis Knudsen is his name, but the band is Lewy Canoe.
That's convenient.
It's funny.
It's kind of cool. Go check both those things out.
Absolutely.
Or really all three of those things. If you hadn't heard of This Is Love, that's a great one.
Yep.
But Nick, I got a question for you.
Let's hear it, buddy.
Have you ever been paid to lead worship?
I have, yeah.
How'd that go for you?
It was an interesting experience, getting paid to be a musician at a church. At the time, I loved it because I didn't have any money. I had just left being a pastor, and several churches I used to play at were like, for fun or whatever, just helping out. Well, would you ever consider working here? And I said, no, I wouldn't. And they're like, well, could we pay you to play on some Sundays, contract you out? And I was like, sure. Because again, at the time, I really needed money, and that was an easy way to make money from something I've put in decades, it seems, of time,
right?
Crafting. And so I could have went to, I went out for an app. Okay, let me back up. This is
okay.
So at the time when I was getting paid to be the musician, I didn't do it very much, but I had an option of this job interview, right? Or being paid at a church to play music. It wasn't like, this is going to be the career for me. It wasn't a bunch of money, but it was something. Well, anyway, I went to this interview, and it was for a sales rep. And it was like, I don't even know what they're selling. I can't remember. But they were like, all right, just show up to the BP gas station off of Capitol Boulevard. And I was like, okay. And so I showed up.
Wait a minute.
To the BP gas station, and I called them, and I was like, hey, I don't see your office. Oh, we're in the closet of the BP gas station. That's where we run our business out of. Oh. And I was like,
sounds legit.
I don't feel comfortable with this, I said, and hung up the phone, and I left. And so I called the church back and was like, hey, I'd love to play this weekend. So really, it came out of a place of need for me, but it was strange, because I don't know, but I assumed everyone else on stage wasn't getting paid.
Oh, interesting.
Because a lot of the churches I was playing at were like a set-up, tear-down church. Everybody was there setting up, and everybody was tearing down, but me.
Sure.
I was like, I'm not doing that. One, I can't because of my spine issues, but I was like, I'm a paid musician, man. I'm not a paid tear downer, So it was strange.
Thank God I have these roadies.
Exactly.
Somebody gonna get this amp?
Yeah, seriously. Come on, I got my Blues Junior. That's what I used to play. Yeah, it was strange. I liked it because of money, but it felt weird at the same time. But maybe it wasn't super weird to me at the time because I had just been a staff member at a church, and everyone else didn't get paid.
Right.
So I don't know, man. I'm super indifferent about the topic, honestly.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. People seem to have a lot of pretty heavy thoughts on it. Right? It seems very black and white.
Correct.
To a lot of folks. But I've always found the conversation interesting because I have been paid. I have not been paid. I have quit because I was paid.
Gotcha.
I've kind of done the gamut. And I think that there's these kind of real, I don't know if the word is like principles, but things where it really makes sense to me and places where it doesn't make sense to me.
Sure.
Because there's pros and cons to everything, right?
Definitely.
What I do know is the church that I was paid at, where I was kind of doing what you were doing, it was an answer to prayer. Because I was in a place where I was same thing. I was in college. I'm like, I need some money.
Yep.
And I was praying. I was like, God, I need to find a way to make some money here, And actually, Jared Anderson, if you're familiar with him at all,
I am.
We were on the same floor, and he was like, hey, I'm playing at this Methodist church. It's a good gig. They do 2 services on Sunday morning, and there's a Wednesday night rehearsal, and they'll pay us. I think it was like $75 a week or something like that, which was like a lot.
Like each person?
I think, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for like a college student, you're like,
that's awesome.
Whoa.
Especially back in your day.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I'm not being mean.
No, you're just being honest.
Yeah,
true.
Inflation wasn't.
This was back very late 90s. But here's the thing: is when I was working at that church, I loved working with the team. This guy Vern was the guy that was kind of like in charge of it all, and he was amazing, and He'd bring us donuts every Sunday. You were just like, wait, I get food and money? This is amazing.
This is the best.
He had actually been to Bellingham. I remember telling him I was moving out to Bellingham. And he's like, I love Bellingham. I'm like, Vern, you're the sweetest guy.
Basically a Taylor Swift tour.
Yeah, that's basically it. He seemed amazing. But here's the thing is as much as I liked playing music and much as I liked playing music well, I did not care at all about what I was doing.
Gotcha.
Like if I'm leading worship, and I was playing guitar. I wasn't leading everything. Jared was leading everything. He was doing a great job. But my attachment to that congregation, to those people, all the intangible things that come with leading worship, I brought none of that. I didn't think it was wrong. I didn't think it was bad, but it's like that piece was missing.
Yeah. Well, did you guys ever play The Great I Am before it came out?
No, we did. He hadn't written it yet.
Well, I'm sure he did.
I mean, it was in his heart.
It was in his...
It was in his heart for sure.
I had... Those words were coming right out of my mouth, and you stole them. Oh. They were right there in his heart.
I gotcha. Yep, you already had them.
The Great I Am, man. Wow.
That's a good song. You can learn that song on worshipartistry.com. Yeah, like it was a really good thing to do, but I did think about it as compared to how I lead worship now, where I am invested in my church, and I actually still get paid, but we can talk about that in a minute. But like, it's very different. I care about that community. I care about that congregation. I write songs for that congregation. I am thinking about those people when I'm leading, and I'm trying to take them with me somewhere. And I think that if you're just a hired gun, because you were saying that like you came in, everybody else was setting up, right?
Yeah.
You don't care. You're like,
no,
I'm an hourly employee, basically, right?
Yeah.
How did that affect the way that you led worship?
It didn't.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you say, like, it feels like a job to you, and you don't want that, or like it feels like work and all that stuff. That's how I've always just viewed it. Like, I'm very, as you know, you've learned me. I'm very, this is it. Like, you said, do this, so I did. Jason was joke. Just to make the point real quick. Hold on. Just because, like, you'll ask me like, "What's up?" and I'll be like, "This guy."
Right. It's very literal.
Very literal. Yep. And I would have. He goes, "No, I mean, like, what are you doing?" Well, why didn't you ask that? Like, you know what I mean? That's what I mean by that. And so, it was very easy for me to do it. I loved all the people there, and I did invest. Because I wasn't singing and like leading all the time, but I'd play to just lead guitar sometimes, and even when I was doing that, I'd always try to lead the meeting. In the morning, like, let's have a little devotional, let's do all these things after, because setup started at like, let's say 6. I'd show up at 7. Rehearsal started at 8, and then services was at like 10 or something. There was always. And I still think this to be true for every single church out there. There's always time to huddle up and pray with one another, to try to invest in your community the best you can for that moment. And that's all I had with them, right? And I wasn't their leader per se. I was a hired gun, but that's how I try to invest in everything I do. Nothing I do am I just on autopilot ever, because I don't think that's right. As a person, I think it's wrong, and that's for me. I'm not deciding that for you or anyone else. It's
I'm always on autopilot.
Yeah, I
don't pay attention to anything
that's why I wanted to do this video. It's actually all about just,
it's an intervention.
I'm so glad we got to this point.
I noticed you've been getting paid to do these lessons, and
it looks like you're on autopilot. No, so yeah, it never affected how I led, really. I never was in a place that was just like, all right, you plebes, stay away from me. Why isn't my stuff set up yet? It wasn't like a diva show or like I'm a rock star or anything, because honestly, I think very lowly of myself. And I never felt bad because I got an extra hour of sleep. So I don't know. I never felt bad, I guess. It never affected me negatively. Everybody was just very appreciative. What about for you though? Like, cause you said years ago, you were leading, you were being paid on staff, right?
Yep.
And then you left that, and then you went to volunteer, but then you were stipend, and now you're on staff again, or?
So it's been kind of an interesting journey. I feel like I've gotten to see all versions
a lot
of this, you know, because I was the contract guy. And like I said, it was a huge blessing to me. And it was, I don't think it was bad for the church at all.
Sure.
But I do think, like I said, I do feel like something was like missing there, you know, just in terms of my heart and what I was doing. Then I was on staff I was an assistant worship leader at a kind of larger church. And what I really struggled with there was, I mean, I was putting in probably double the amount of hours I was paid for. But I would often get the like, hey, you know, as leaders, we need to protect ourselves. We need to like have boundaries and, you know, all those things, right? But then I would be asking people to show up for 4 services on Sunday.
Yeah.
So take their entire Sunday, right? And use that for the church, right? But I had to protect my time. But I can use their time.
Sure.
And I really had a hard time figuring out, just for myself, like, where am I giving here? And where am I getting paid for? Like, what is that line? And it was so blurred in that environment that eventually I was just like, I don't want to do this. I'd rather just volunteer. And once again, I don't think there was anything wrong with it. I was doing a lot, you know, and I had the time to do it at that time. But it was definitely, I felt like I just had a hard time drawing that line. And I was like, well, I want to be the kind of leader that does more than my people, right? Like I want to get underneath them and help them. And it was just, it was really hard for me to draw that line. And so eventually I left there. I went to help plant a church. It was very clear. I do not want to be on staff here. I just want to play. And so I did that for a number of years. And then the worship leader who was paid there, he left. And it was like, well, I was clearly next man up, you know, and it was like, well, hey, Jason, can you do this? And I was like, well, I'll volunteer. I'll get it going. And I made a lot of changes. There was kind of like a high demand setup. And I was like, we can make this easier. Like, I feel like everybody's really tired because we were set up tear down church too. It was like, I don't think we need these huge subs for these 50 people. That feels excessive to me. Let's just not use them, you know, like, and I just slowly started making the sound system smaller. And, but what I learned in that scenario was like, it got to the point where I was running so much that I was like, okay, I need to be paid for some of this because so much is being required of me. And so that's kind of where I draw the line on it, where I look for myself, I look at it and go, what is the difference between a paid musician at a church versus a volunteer musician? And for me, I looked at it as like, I'm volunteering to play here, to bring my guitar and play and sing. That's my volunteer work. But prepping the teams, coaching the teams, putting together all the slides, making sure we always have music, because that was kind of the big thing for us was like, if I'm not there, who is?
Right,
you know, it's like I'm responsible for that. And so that responsibility was kind of like, okay, can you just pay me for that responsibility? You know, what does that look like?
Right.
And, you know, church is amazing. They were like, of course, you know, you're pastoring all these people. It makes sense to do this. And so for me, that was kind of like a good turning point of going, and I still do that now. I still think of leading worship at church as volunteering, and I get paid a very small stipend to just kind of always make sure that something's happening.
Sure. Yeah. You know? Yeah. No, that's good. Cause like when you initially posed the question, hey, should we talk about this? Yes, the answer is yes for me. But I really only viewed it from like a contractor standpoint only, not like, because like I would consider you on staff at Mosaic.
Yeah, I'm the worship pastor,
whether you got paid or not. I would consider you that, right? And but you're saying like, should worship pastors even be paid? Are you asking that kind of question?
I mean, I think just overall, I think that's because
any music,
right? Because
should anyone be paid?
Right? Should anyone be paid? Because here's what ends up happening. Here's the things we see in our comments. Right?
Yeah.
Is like there is a great argument to be made. Like I always say, like if a musician plays a single note for you, like that is a gift they're giving you because they have put so much time and effort into being able to do that.
Right.
So if I play you a song, you have no idea how many hours of my life I have put in to be able to do that for you, right? Sure, that's a really powerful gift, right?
Right.
It's a similar scenario of expertise, right? Like you kind of look at people when it's their profession, especially if it's their profession, right? You know, you make amazing videos.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did pay him to say that.
Yeah, well, no, I pay you to make the videos.
I was the sponsor.
I actually pay you to make the videos. That's how. But here's the thing, though. I wouldn't say to you, "Hey, Nick, can you just grab your camera and do a bunch of work for this little thing I'm doing over on the side?" I wouldn't think about doing that without paying you because that's your profession.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to take advantage of your profession. At the same time, if you came to my church and said, "Hey, I love this. I'd love to just shoot a little. Can I just do a little video? Can I help out?" And you were a part of our community, of course, you know. And we'd have that conversation of like, "Well, do you want to be paid or is this volunteer? Like, what is this?" You know, and kind of clearly defining what was happening. And I feel it's kind of a similar way with musicians, right? Because it's like some people are just like, "I can play 4 chords," and other people are like, "I'm a gigging musician."
Yeah.
Right. At the same time, I think the beauty of church worship teams is that you're bringing all these people together and the skill levels can be all over the place and we're all kind of helping each other do this thing. And so I think it's kind of a heart issue of trying to figure out like, what is your heart in doing things? You know, when the church was like, "Hey, we'll pay you." I wasn't like, "Don't." But I did say, "Pay me for this only." And whatever's fair for that. That's what I want to be paid.
Sure.
And so I can still kind of give to this. So I just kind of look at it as like, what are you the musician choosing to give? Because it is your choice, you know? But I don't love the idea of like, I'm not doing it unless I'm paid. Because right then and there, I'm kind of like, well, then we probably don't need you. Like, I'd rather have you have the heart to want to do it.
So I'd like to know from your perspective of things, because you seem a little bit more like clear on the direction you have on this certain topic than me. I am indifferent about it still. I see benefits to it. I see negatives to it. And we could be here for 7 days if we needed to be talking about it.
Let's not do that.
Let's not, please. So do you see any benefits or only negatives potentially from hiring a contracted like lead guitar player, or drummer or something? And furthermore, because I discovered that I only thought you meant like contracted musicians. Should there be a full-time worship pastor? Should there be a full-time worship minister, whatever you want to call it? What do you think?
Yeah, I think with the full-time is interesting to me. So, in full disclosure, like our church is all bivocational. There's nobody that's on staff full time, even the senior pastor.
Is that part of like your bylaws,
like the
policy?
ethos? It's just like the ethos, right?
Okay.
It's kind of like, hey, we want to be here, and we also want to be in the community serving in that way.
Okay.
And so everybody does other things. There are positives and negatives to that, right? Like, you know, I tried to be fully volunteer. Like ideally, I thought that was going to be the best. And it was like, this is asking too much. It doesn't work, right? So everybody's context is going to be different. You know, my only job as the worship pastor, or thing that I'm really responsible for is making sure music happens on Sunday. Like that's my job description. I'm like, I don't want to go to meetings. I don't want I want to be in charge of the team. And, you know, and so however much I make of that is my choice, right? There's no way I could make that a full-time job in my scenario. Now, if I was running a choir, if I was running a children's music program and a youth music program, like when I was at the larger church, I was doing way more. So I was working 30 hours at a 14-hour a week job, right? In a lot of ways, trying to prove my value, trying to show like, hey, we really need this. And one of the challenges for me was a little bit like, do we really need this? You know, like, how much do we really need here? And I understand like not everybody goes to that question. Like some people are like, more is more, right?
Yeah.
And I'm much more like, how important is this? Like let's lay it out.
Yeah.
So I think it just really depends, like in terms of staff and all that kind of stuff. I do think though that it is important, and once again, this is my own like ethos, right?
Yeah.
But I do see a real strong value in the people at the church investing in the church. I have no interest in putting on a show for my congregants. I have no interest in having like the best music in the world so that maybe that puts butts in the seats, or maybe like you walk in and go like, that sounded so great. I really don't care.
Sure.
I do not care. I care that you came in, that we spent time together, that we sang together, that we focused our hearts on Jesus together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of it.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And I think that looks really different in a lot of different contexts. You know, you come to Mosaic, it's going to look one way.
Right.
You know, you go to Christ the King downtown or whatever, it's going to look something totally different.
Yeah.
Which is all great. Sure. So I don't want to say like, yes, this is the way to do it and this is not the way to do it. But what I will say is, having been in all those situations, at least for myself, like I really want the people that are playing for my community to care about my community and to be playing for my community, not for a paycheck.
Sure.
And that means that our music is not going to sound like a professional band. It's going to be good.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to make sure it's good. But it's not going to sound like Elevation, you know? It's going to sound like Mosaic. But you know what? Mosaic's really going to love that. And if I came in sounding like Elevation, they'd be like,
stop.
What?
Just get out of here. Where's Jason? What'd you do with him?
What are you doing?
Where's my friend Jason?
I want the people on my worship team to be fully engaged with my church. And if that means that we only have piano and acoustic guitar this week, I'd rather have that than have to create a production that makes the music sound a certain way.
Sure, yeah. So, okay, perfect segue, I think. Would you rather have, okay, this is a little segment.
Sure.
Do, game show music. Would you rather have tracks or paid musicians?
Can I say see none of the above?
No, not this scenario.
All right, I have to choose one. Okay.
You have to choose one.
Honestly, I would probably use tracks.
Really? Why is that? That's surprising to me.
Because tracks, like, they're kind of neutral.
Okay.
You know, they're kind of like, okay, I can use this however I want.
Yeah.
Versus like, all right, I'm going to pay this guy to bring in. And on top of it, I've heard this a number of times, and I do not understand this. Maybe you can explain this to me because it sounds like you were in this position. But I've heard churches that are like, well, they pay this guy and this guy, but they expect me to show up, 4 times a month to play. But this guy gets paid and I don't get paid.
Yeah.
That seems unfair. Like, what do you, I look at that and I'm like, that just seems like, you're just like, let's like lay out a bunch of thumbtacks on the ground and try and walk around them. A bunch of Legos.
Yeah.
It seems hard.
So, okay, no one's ever said anything to me, ever. When I'm not a paid musician anymore. I don't do any of that stuff anymore. When I pay, I usually like to have nobody know who I am. It's like, Nick, you can play guitar sometimes. You know, I like to show up with my bass, and I don't even have a case for it. You know, like, right. Just here's my bass, I'm playing. But no one ever said anything to me. No one was ever weird or nasty. Maybe behind closed doors or something. But for the most part, I was very well received, and people were very excited that I was there. Not me, but just like somebody who knew what they were doing.
Sure.
I think they were just stoked that, like, I don't know, dude. How is it for you, I guess? Like,
I feel like I'm doing so much talking. You just keep asking me questions.
Hold on. What's it like for you? Because for me, when I play with better musicians,
sure,
I'm stoked. Like, sure. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, we sounded so good today. And it was like, I was a part of this amazing team. And so that's how I view it, is like, I'm not upset because I've been on the team as well where that person's been paid and I'm just a volunteer. I wasn't upset that they were there,
right?
And they were getting paid, and I wasn't. Well, one, I didn't know about it, and that's weird to me. I think if you do have paid musicians, I think the whole team needs to know,
right? Like hey,
this guy's just showing up randomly, and he doesn't ever go to church other than that.
In fact, he doesn't even know Jesus.
Exactly.
This is an evangelistic opportunity.
This is strange.
If you guys want to mention your testimony at some point during rehearsal, it'd be good.
But what is it like for you? Like when I play with a better musician or somebody or a killer band that's just like, whoa, and I'm just sitting there, even just playing like one note, like on the wrong beat even. But like, what's it like for you? Are you like overwhelmed or are you stoked?
Oh, no, I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think playing good music is a really good thing. I think a lot of church musicians don't even get to do that because they're kind of like shoehorned into like, hey, I just need you to do this.
Correct. Yeah.
You know, and so once again, in my own context, there is a lot of creative juices flowing and a lot of back and forth. And it's a lot of like, well, what do you want to do here? And then we create the sound together.
Sure. Yeah.
So that creates a different vibe than like, hey, everybody come in and play these parts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've been in those scenarios as well. Right. So yes, I don't think I would get upset if somebody was paid and I wasn't.
Yeah.
Where I think the tricky part is it's what we're expecting of people. So when I think about being a worship pastor, I expect my volunteers to act like volunteers, right? So I expect them to do their best when they're there. I am overwhelmingly grateful at how bought in they all are.
Oh, yeah.
And how many ideas they bring to the table.
They sound awesome.
And that they're just like, hey, let's like I have people, hey, can I play this week? And like my friend Nate, this newer guy on the team, guy plays drums, guy can play bass, guy can play electric guitar, he can sing, he can do all these things.
Yeah.
How great is it to have Nate?
Awesome.
It's better when Nate is there.
Right.
Right. But I also recognize Nate's a volunteer. So I don't want to schedule. I asked Nate, how often do you want to play? Okay, you want to do like twice a month? Okay, that's perfect. And then, and you're also willing to jump in if I need you or something like that. Great. I'm going to keep Nate around twice a month because I don't want to expect more of him than I should expect of a volunteer. I think a lot of churches tend to go, what a privilege it is to be in the worship ministry. So what that means is you got to be here at practice on Wednesday, and then you got to play 4 services on Sunday. And obviously these are larger churches, but I think it can be all kinds of things, right? It's kind of like, you said you were going to do this, so we're going to monopolize your time and use that.
Yep.
And that's an area where I go like, you should pay me because you're monopolizing my time and you're asking more than what should be asked of a typical volunteer. Right. So when I look at churches that want that, I'm like, yeah, you should totally pay your musicians. You're asking for a lot, right? If you're asking to play once a month, and then this other, say you're paying somebody, right? That's like, oh, this guy has to be there every week. This is where I'd like, to me, the worship pastor piece comes in, where it's like, well, no, you're like, I'm paid to care about this all the time, every week, to know who's going to be there, to coach them, to grow them, to equip them, to make sure everything happens, right? That's more than a volunteer job. So yeah, I should pay you for that.
Sure.
You know, so does that make sense?
Makes
so
sense,
that's kind of like where the line is for me a little bit. But I do see, I don't know, I do sometimes wonder, like, if I'm a church that wants my people to be at a certain musical quality level, right? What should I invest in? Right? Like, I mean, you can get a team account at Worship Artistry for a couple $100 for a whole year. And equip everybody on your team to play all these songs and invest in them. Or you could pay like some guy like $100 a week to come in.
It's much more than that.
Probably more than that. Yeah. You know, like, but I'm thinking about inflation.
Yeah. 90s.
75 for me at the time, which I said probably about $1,000 now. But you know, like,
I wish.
You can do that. But I think those are also fundamental, like, vision differences, right? It's kind of going, do I want to grow what I already have planted here? Or do I just want to have music that sounds like this? And if you just want to have music that sounds like this, go pay musicians to do that. But I think that there is a tangible benefit to investing in the people that you have, because that actually creates community, that actually creates growth, it creates buy-in, and you're not dealing with a bunch of planning center declines. You're actually having people go, can I play? Can I play?
Yeah.
That's rad.
When hiring a musician, we often think about it's probably going to be good, right? Like hopefully they're prepared, and you know, it's not a horror story where they're just, what songs are we playing today, guys? It's like, man, you're a nice person, but you're fired. You should have been prepared.
I have some expectations,
right? Yeah. So what do we think about, like, do people hire these people because they're like, we have to have excellent sounding music or excellent time of worship music, whatever? Well, why do they have, like, is it excellence in mind? Because I don't think it's authenticity, because I think what you're saying is striving for authentic. Like, we're doing it like naturally from like the ground up, and
Yeah.
like people are buying in on their own. I'm not like trying to convince them this is cool.
Right, yeah.
I'm not trying to convince them you should be doing this. You're serving on the children's team, you idiot. You need to be on the stage or whatever. Like you're not trying to convince anybody.
I would love to hear you have that conversation with somebody.
Do you think people are looking at it like we have to have excellence? So my options are tracks or people that I buy.
Sure.
And okay, here's something that's crazy to me. You just mentioned a little earlier in the video. Worship Artistry is a couple $100 for a church for the whole year.
Right.
When I was getting paid to be a musician, I got paid. I think it was $200 or $250 for those services. Then I'd go to another church, get paid about the same thing, and I'd go to like two different churches a week, and that was great, extra money, right? They were hiring for, excellence.
Right.
They weren't hiring because they thought I was a cool dude.
Right.
So why do people really care, like in the audience, or is it really just the people who are behind the scenes at a church who care about excellence?
That is such a great question.
Honest, yeah.
Because it is funny. I think as worship leaders, we assume that we know what the congregation wants.
Totally.
Right. Or the pastor assumes that they know here's what we need.
Right.
This is what's going to bring people in. I'd be really curious to go around and poll a congregation.
Oh, absolutely.
And go like a lot of times people say, well, we have to play the songs just like the record because that's how people know the songs.
Yeah, you don't want to distract them from worshiping because it'll be a little different.
Right. They're expecting this.
Yeah.
So we have to give them that.
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to poll a congregation and be like, how many of you listen to worship music during the week?
Yeah. It'd be. I think the answer would be less than we think.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think that we hold ourselves to a standard that we have to do that.
Yeah.
I think similarly, pastors will look at things. We got to bring people in. This is like the opening act to the sermon, right? That probably feels a little edgy to say it that way, but sometimes I think
that's how it feels, though.
Sometimes, right? And so, in that case, if the vision is like, we're trying to attract people in here and we're going to get them with this, and then we're going to do this because we think they like this music, and therefore the band's got to be on point and perfect. Sure, I guess, that's probably why you're doing that, because you have this expectation of what you want it to be. What I think, and this kind of almost goes back to our looking forward in the future of worship and kind of where things are, the things that I hear people talk about, both in person and online, is this idea of we want authentic worship.
Yep.
We want authentic worship. And it's well, what is authentic worship? It's Jerry doing his best to lead us in a song. That's authentic to our community. That's who we are, right? If everything is super polished and great, and that's also authentic. I don't sit there and look at somebody who crushes it every Sunday and go, man, you guys really should play worse.
You need to be more authentic.
Yeah, be more authentic. Be bad.
Yeah.
I don't look at that. I don't think that at all.
I don't think authentic means bad.
No, I don't at all. But I do think that authenticity matters to people.
Yes.
And I think they care a lot less about the things that we think they care about. And I think that in the way that we choose to do things, when we're everything has to be excellent and perfect, I think what we're teaching our congregation is if it's not, it's bad.
Yeah.
And, that's on us, where we got to do better.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's, I don't know if that's a very Christ-like teaching.
A healthy place to be, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that God has specifically called each and every one of us to something. Whatever that something may be for you will be different for me. And I think that's the beauty of it. Truly, it's Jason has this idea and he's going to run with that thing and do it really well, and until God convicts him of something else, right? Same with me. And so who am I to say truly that church is wrong because they have tracks or they hire musicians and they have a full-time worship pastor and stuff like that. But I do find it strange when they are adding things to just, well, we're paying you, so you need to do something more. And so they're just finding things for people to do. It's strange. It's strange to me. And so I don't know. I just truly think you should never let any human tell you what to do. any one person. If you think God's telling you to do this for your church, do that. Whether that is against what we're saying or not, I don't care, because what I truly care about at the end of the day is just, are you listening to God? Are you doing what he says you should do? Or are you listening to Instagram or even us? Like,
don't listen to us. We don't know what we're talking about.
Honestly, like, we try to be as unbiased as we can with this stuff, but we're human. We still have bias, and like, we still have opinions on everything, right? Or we can. And I don't know, dude. It's a hard topic, really, because the whole excellence piece, like, for so long, we've been excellence. For me, at least, that's all.
Totally.
I started out in a big church, and that's all we ever talked about at every church I worked at. And it was just, got to be excellence for the Lord, excellence for this. And there were so many justifications on spending money, like, I remember one of them was so funny to me. It was like, we just bought $1 million soundboard or whatever, install. And I was like, why did we need that? What was wrong with the last one? And I remember the sound person, they just looked at me and they were like super defensive already because I asked a single question. But they were like, well, they had temples back in the day and they made those nice. Those were some of the nicest places. Why wouldn't we have nice things? And I was like, okay, cool, man. Like, whatever.
Not saying you're a bad guy.
No, not at all. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have nice things. I was just like, why? What was wrong with the last one? And so, like, we just have this. We as people, I think, just have agreed of like, this is a new shiny thing, and if we don't have this, we won't sound good. And if we don't sound good, nobody will come to us. And if nobody comes to us, how are we then going to spread the gospel? I don't know, dude. It's we all have different values, truly, and we all have different like convictions that God's putting on us. I think that's beautiful. I really do, because if we were all the exact same, I mean, it would just be black and white. It'd just be gray, monochrome all the time, right? And I don't like that. I like all the different flavors. I like all the different colors. There's so many different types of songs. There's so many different types of churches, so many different types of leadership. But then we try to say excellence and then have this mold. It's crazy to me, absolutely crazy. And then we have consultants to come in and be like, well, no, you got to do this because this church does that. That's nuts to me as well.
Yeah, I hope that you guys don't hear us saying that there is one way to go about this.
Right. No.
But what we are saying is that if you step away from everything and you don't just ask the question, well, should we be paid or not, and just hyper focus on this question, and if instead you kind of go, what is God putting on my heart? What are we to be moving towards?
Right.
What is drawing me closer to the face of Jesus? Then all the other things start to kind of fall into place. You start going, okay, well, if that's my center, if that's my North Star, like, I didn't know that I needed to be paid for what I was doing until I was doing so much I needed to be paid. Right. I didn't want that. I was like, but that almost becomes like self-righteousness, right? Like, I'm the guy that I only volunteer. Like, that's not the point either.
Yeah.
You kind of look at the main thing of what you're trying to do. And sometimes that'll be hard. That, for me, that required me to step away from my church. And it's funny, not everybody understands that. My encouragement to you guys, I think our encouragement is to follow God.
Yes.
Right? Follow and listen. Don't just go, here's a symptom, I got to fix the symptom. Step back and go, what is the bigger question?
Yeah.
And the bigger question is, what does God want you to do with your worship team? Like, what will most benefit your church community? Do that.
Correct. Yep. Because the whole idea of this is going to solve all of your problems.
Right. It would definitely get more clicks on YouTube.
Oh, absolutely. But like, there's not a one thing solves everything other than worshipartistry.com, because we do all things.
That's true. We actually would solve it. Just a side note, it actually would solve so many of these
honestly
problems.
It does blow me away that like people will pay musicians several $100s for the day when for that one day,
right?
When it costs that much for the whole year,
right?
And your whole team has access to it,
right?
And they can learn these songs in a very easy and tangible way. And one of my favorite things, honestly, is they can email us And I said us.
That's right, yeah.
Like if they want a question about acoustic something, they're emailing Jason.
Yeah.
You're going to get an answer from Jason. I think that's amazing. It's not just like...
It's not like a bot.
Yeah, it's not some weird bot or just somebody who doesn't really know or like, we'll be right back with you. There might be an automated message. Maybe, I don't know.
We have we do have a support person that
There you go.
dispatches.
Yeah. But like, it blows me away that there's not more people involved with that. But we will pay thousands of dollars. Thousands of dollars.
It is. Sometimes I put my head in my hands because even when I use our worship.
Yeah.
I use worship artistry. That is how I've told my new guitar player is like, hey, I just need you to learn this riff. Just check out the riff. It's right there.
Right there.
Just learn that.
Yep.
And then they come in and they're like,
that's awesome.
Like that sounded great. Like, yeah, see, this is how it works. But
then they
you kind of have to take that step.
Yeah, confidence is key, man. Once you're stoked about the sound and how good it sounds, the confidence is there, and it's it's amazing. So, all else to say, we believe here that we want to encourage you guys with a lot of these thoughts. It's not like we're here to be negative Nancy's or Debbie Downers or whatever. And it's literally just think about these things and don't just accept what pop culture is saying is normal for our church, or your church rather. What's normal for Elevation is not normal for Mosaic.
Right.
And we do know from Jason's experience, like, his church would hate it if it tried to be Elevation. And I'm sure Elevation would hate it if they tried to be Mosaic. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that we should pay musicians? Should a worship leader be full-time? What do you think? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hopefully, we'll have a good discussion in the comments with it. I'm indifferent on it. I do see value in paying, and I do see value in not paying. So let me know. Are you on Team Nick or Team Jason?
Just don't pay anyone ever.
Ever. He's like,
except for me.
Exactly. Yeah, we want to know what you guys think. So let us know in the comments, but we will see you guys in our next video.